All right, NHL 20 GTO once again. Ayo kiddos. Time to explore the would-be premier Week 1 fantasy hockey player card release, which first of all indicates there's going to at least be a second week of other cards besides these that will be released, at which I can be happy to explore a little bit. I think I can probably do it from the from this screen here. I don't necessarily have to go full screen for me at least. But if I feel like a 6 or an 8 on the stats is looking a little bit too muddy, a little bit too pixelated on my end, then certainly I'll go full screen for this. But one of the many things to point out here is that there's nothing that I can show you, and there's nothing that I'm going to talk about that you couldn't see for yourself if you have the game. So if you don't have the game, then this could be new and could help you when you first get into the game, I guess. There's nothing that you can't see for yourself already in the game that I could show, and there's nothing that I'm going to say that you wouldn't have been able to figure out on your own anyways. But the thing is, so far in NHL 20, and was my experience for most of NHL 19 also, outside of a few exceptions, certainly a couple of let's say enterprising gents, most likely gents. They were definitely enterprising though, that part's for sure. Over on Reddit would find certain things, even if there's plenty of people there in other places, whether they end up publicizing or not, that may be looking for either glitches or bugs, or just other gameplay competitive advantages that they could pick up. And I don't want to get into that and muddy the waters and rabbit hole that potential conversation really at all, because outside of how the cards with their stats can play in the game, that's really the extent of what we're going to talk about here as it relates to gameplay. So this is again another kind of not gameplay aspect of the game that tends to be overlooked in my opinion. And along with all of those disclaimers that I'm going to start off with, part of that is I get it. If for you it's hey, it's a game, I want to have fun. Absolutely, it is a game, I want to have fun also. I can't competitively because I'm terrible at the game, and in fact I can't even really compete versus the CPU on the highest level, so superstar in a lot of cases. So there's that for me. But the thing that I do, seemingly, I can't imagine I'm the only one that's done this, but seemingly I do have a competitive advantage on the non-gameplay aspect of it that could impact choices that you make and the team that you end up building out and putting out there onto the ice. And it does. I'm not seeing a lot of others that either have this or are putting it out. But it is what it is, right? So, actually, I just because I like it, I'm so used to it. Hold on one second. I'm gonna go full screen here. Let's keep it standard for what we do here. It's our normal screen here. Once the little thing on the left side goes away for you on the pixelation, so you actually see the top of Senior Hall's card there. So this is one of the fantasy hockey card releases on day one, week one. I wouldn't really expect other week one releases during this week, but it's not completely out of the question. Seeing some tomorrow, Saturday, the September 28th, would be for me a bit odd, but also not out of the question. But I think that if they're going to be anything like Evos were last year in 19, it seemed more likely that what we have here so far are going to be all of Week 1's contributions, if I could speak properly, to this new fantasy hockey aspect of the game. It's not a new mode, so kind of new aspect to the game. And if you watch the previous discussion about the buy or sell value of the Master Set player card, only one so far in Week 1 of this one called a set. I think I made it pretty clear that I'm generally more excited presently for how this is happening compared to how Evos happened last year for specific reasons. And Evos were kind of the most enjoyment that I got from 19 prior to Endgame being able to just very easily set my whole team as pure 99s across the board with all but one player, all the synergies but one player-based synergy missing a little bit with the selections that I had, and I didn't really care because again, almost every single player were 99s across the board in the actual stat categories. They might have been a little lacking in some of the traits or tendencies for position players, things like aggression, discipline, fighting skill, that sort of stuff. Non-centers, which could be wingers or they could be D-men, face-off stats or attribute not being 99, things like that, not a problem at all. I still consider it to be a pure 99 over there in 19 if it's not 99 in the three mostly fighting tendency quote-unquote stat categories, as well as the face-offs. So that wasn't a plug for my 19 team being 99s across the board. I think everybody else's was as well if they continued to play the game into the summer and into the time right before 20 started. So without having to backtrack too much, I've talked about it, I feel like quite a bit, almost too much at this point. And I certainly have mentioned it on my Twitter account. The handle was shown at the bottom of the screen there, but it's super easy to find. It's at NHL20GTO, NHL20GTO. Feel free to send some trolling comments with me tagged in them. I'm happy to see it and respond to it, as long as you're not just a complete jerk about things the way that the individual who joined the last live chat was and has been banned from this channel, which is the first person I've ever done that to, and I don't feel like I need to, but I did in this case. Anyways, try to see how quickly I can. I was planning on what to say, but I don't have it written down. There's no script here, so I just want to try to see if I can get this off as quickly, succinctly, and making as much sense as I can. So what I did, starting with the 80 plus position players only, meaning current NHL players who were not goalies, who had 80 or higher as their overall, which were referred to as gold rares in previous years, and in this year, during that EA Access 10 hours that we had before even the 3-day early pre-order release, which I was also a part of, they were generally being referred to as premium cards. So this one for now technically doesn't even qualify as a true gold, because you have to be 74 or higher for that. So 74 to 79 were just being referred to as whatever they called them. Obviously again last year they were gold commons. This year I think they just keep calling them just gold players. And then 80 plus being referred to as premium. And then you'll notice when you're opening packs, even 81s have a different animation to the explosion of opening a particular card in a pack. over the 80s, specifically like 8080 exactly. Um, and then they go up from there where I think 83s do something a little bit extra than 81s and 82s do, but I may be off on that. And then at some point they become purple. Certainly 85s do purple, and then luckily the some of the most exciting cards, at least before today, for everybody, and certainly for me still, the Master Set Icon cards, which are guaranteed to be 85 or higher, essentially 85 through 90 for the standard Master Icons, and then 91 overall for the two Master Set Player Master Icons. When those pop up in packs, it goes ice and basically freezes, and then you have to reveal from there, and then you get a nice little kind of walkout cutscene mini animation. It's pretty sweet. You can see billions of those online. I've got I don't know, probably 5 or so on this channel as they popped up live for me. So the point is the 80 plus NHL players, position players, non-goalies that the game started with, sometimes referred to as live series in a lot of games, meaning not specials. So this is a special card, obviously, but Primetime, the classic NHL cards that came out with the first week's event, now we have Team of the Week. It just came out for the first time this week, so first official Team of the Week cards, those as well. And we haven't seen we haven't seen milestones yet. I don't have any inside information, so I don't know if that will actually happen. But technically, you need the regular season stats to be able to complete a milestone, anyways. And then also. I don't know. There's global series cards, so those are specials as well. So there weren't very many of those that were part of the game, both pre-launch on EA Access and the 3 days on the pre-order, as well as official launch. There were some cards that came out with the sort of official launch 3 days in. But excluding essentially all those and just going off of the base cards, to get a good understanding of both what those base cards values ought to be to start the game with, as well as, most importantly for me, what every single one of those cards would eventually do if they progressed at all. Okay, so hopefully you're following me up to this point. In 80, there's not in the max at 87 for base cards, and that's McDavid, Crosby. I don't know why I always seem to think that Ovi is an 86 in this year's version as well. I mean, he's on my team. You'd think I would actually remember that. But whether Ovi's 86 or 87, he's obviously up there in one of the top cards. But so McDavid and Crosby for sure are 87s. Kucherov is an 87. I don't know. There might be another couple that I'm missing, or maybe even just at least one. I'm not sure, but not really the point. Point being, there's obviously a ton more that are 80 and a little bit higher than that. But every 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, and the few 87s that started the game. And yes, I did feel the need to list every single one of those so that this was 100% crystal clear what I was talking about. Every single one of those I pulled off of the information, like you can see here for the cards. I did it during the EA Access. So yes, I didn't get a chance to play as much of the gameplay. I missed out on some squad battle opportunities, as well as anything else that I could have done as far as gameplay with hut challenges and things like that. But I felt like it was very important for me to have that as a starting point to essentially build the database. And I've already talked about this quite a bit in the first few weeks of the game. Even though I don't necessarily feel as though anybody at EA or even anybody that might be tangential to EA, either as working as a someone to bolster the community efforts or a game changer or anything like that. I don't necessarily feel like they're, you know, um, I don't know. I don't feel as though they're kind of looking over my shoulder as I do any of these things or talk about any of them. But if they did and they had a problem, I'm happy to take things down, stop talking about them, whatever. I don't think that's going to happen. As far as I know, the way that I did it did not break any terms of service for Sony, for EA in general, EA Sports, or specifically EA Sports Vancouver, known on Twitter as at EA Sports NHL, being the developers of this game and FIFA and not much else. But the point is, they are the ones in charge of development for this game. And I painstakingly pulled off the information manually, entered it all manually, and then loaded it up into the engine that actually did the work. Um, and so again, I don't foresee any problems at all with the fact that I did that. Was kind of happy to share that information. Expected. I guess I'm gonna end up giving a plug here for what looks to be someone else who's basically doing similar things, but has been doing it for years, and is going to be putting something out. He indicated just earlier today plans for the site, but HutDB, being HUTDB, meaning Hut Database, being the place that plenty of people have gone over the years for specific information, sort of like this, sort of what I'm talking about here. But I'm all for good information getting put out into the community, especially when it's objective, like underlying stats on a player card. It's objective. There's objective. There's nothing you can sort of make up about that. You can be subjective about it to say whether or not you think it's good or bad. And I am actually literally going to get to that point for this Taylor Hall card, and therefore for all Taylor Hall cards in general. But I just want to start with that as a starting point. That again, I had all of that information, so every one of those underlying stats, not just the face stats, but the underlying stats, so acceleration, agility, balance, all the way over to the third line, or second line, I mean, passing, puck control, body checking, third line, both awareness on offense and defense, shot blocking, stick checking, face-offs, all of those. I pulled all that down for all those cards. I also put down everything else that you see, not necessarily here because it's a little bit different of a card, but generally what you see here as far as their height and weight, what handedness they are. I didn't care so much about their nationality or their age or their salary. I wasn't looking to build anything that would need to factor any of those three things in, but certainly was also inputting, besides their overall rating that you see on the card there, their position and their play type. And then clearly the synergies, being that the synergies were something that I wanted to and expected to focus on early on, and for the most part I have. So if you follow me so far, you say, okay, so you had all the information basically listed out in accessible format, as opposed to kind of having to go manually through any particular card or group of cards to have a best guess as to how you would want to compare them and try to avoid any sort of false equivocation and stuff like that. So sure, that was the starting point, and I had that. And then again, during EA Access, which we were given 10 hours, but we were given it it was at least 5 days before the 3-day early access. I think. Felt like that. I guess it might not have been a week. It might not have been 10 days. Because that doesn't seem to make too much sense. And if it was, there wasn't a Squad Battles game that was available at the very beginning of it. Because it was only 1 week of Squad Battles that kind of went off before everybody else was able to get into the game. That's not good. Let's take care of that later. So The important part for me was, yes, having that info, but then what to do with the engine that you put it in and what you derive out of it, right? So what I did is very basic, and anybody can do this. It's just, again, a matter of I pulled the starting point information off manually, literally every single spot. And in fact, when initially sharing some of my, quote unquote findings from this on Twitter, I have a tweet, and I don't think I bothered to delete it or anything. I kept up there that I was correcting my error. But I had listed two players, and I do know who they are, who were going to be they were going to be close based on what I had, but they were going to be the only ones who would not max out on speed if they received a 99 overall card that progressed in a linear fashion up from wherever they were starting, again with 80 at the lowest and 87 as the highest. And it turned out that for those two players, I just basically had an input error on their speed for their base card, and so putting in the correct number for those two changed that up and made it so that literally every single 80 plus position player, offense and defense, if they ever progress up to a 99 and they do it in a linear fashion, they will in fact at some point max out their speed at 99 on from a base perspective on the underlying card, having nothing to do with any other boosts that they can get almost exclusively from synergies, whether they're the synergies that they have, whether they're team-based, player-based, whatever, it doesn't matter. And this Taylor Hall is actually an example of that. If you're completely clueless what I'm talking about, you see his 72 here has a base speed of 83. And as far as the linear progression goes, what it means is that when this particular card, being actually a much better example from the regular cards, which seem to be getting informs that go +2 right off the bat. But this one, if he only, the way the fantasy hockey works for position players, if you score a goal, you get +1 added to your overall ratings. I am assuming, and one of the few videos that I saw discussing this event seemed like they were confused about this, but I'm assuming that every time you get a +1 on the overall rating, that it's a linear progression on all the underlying stats, and they will go up as well. One of the pros that have been doing this for years and posted a video about this event seemed to be confused in thinking that, like, for some reason the underlying stats either wouldn't progress or it wouldn't be I don't know, like, systematic in how they would progress. I think part of the point that was trying to be made in that sort of quick little aside question that individual did, I believe, was specifically about the aggression tendency, and not necessarily wanting, although I think he was speaking more about goalie, but that makes sense because it's actually sometimes more important, that aggression tendency for goaltenders, in my opinion, and I think in that person's opinion as well. So part of what they were trying to think through was, hey, maybe we don't actually want the aggression tendency, which is listed as a stat category for goaltenders, to increase even as the card progresses up to a 99. Certain people, myself included for now, would actually like whatever the base card starts off with for aggression to just literally stay there and not go up. Technically, I'd actually kind of prefer in some cases that as the overall on the goalies go up, the aggression tendency goes down, to be honest. It's just me. It's different play styles, though. It's different opinions. That is definitely completely subjective. However, as I said, it seemed like they were a little bit confused as to what to expect on the progression of the underlying stats for every card that has a fantasy hockey card, and whether they're progressing +1 for every goal or +1 for every win as a goalie. So I'm assuming, and I don't understand why this wouldn't be the case, that they've already pointed out you get +1 for every goal, At 95, you get an additional +1 for your synergies. Taylor has 2 different synergies here that are getting +1 right now, so those would each go to +2 when he gets a 95 overall. But the underlying stats should also go up +1 every time that the overall goes +1. So this 72 that has acceleration 83, agility 80, and speed of 83, each of those should go up +1 when he scores 1 goal and it gets boosted up to a 73. Acceleration should become 84, agility should become 81, and speed should also become 84. And that is what we refer to as linear progression. It just linear, just as it kind of sounds like. You spell it line AR, but it's just moving essentially in a straight line, and means that the progression is such that as the overall goes up, every other underlying stat goes up by that same amount. So even if this 72 got a boost of +12, and you'd think, well, that would be silly. Why would that happen? Just give me 1 second. If it did, all the underlying stats would go up +12 as well. Now, why do I use 12 as an example? Well, Taylor Hall's base card is an 84. And so this is actually a very good example. The other ones are as well. For anyone that was wondering if these fantasy hockey cards came out with anything different, anything boosted compared to the base cards, and it's already in the description, so I'm not really giving anything away here. I am a strong seller of this Taylor Hall card now and forever, all the way up to 99. And so that part, for me at least, is clear. Anybody that's wondering if things got boosted, this Taylor Hall 72 being exactly 12 points lower on the overall from his base card of 84, every one of the underlying statistics are also 12 points lower. And I was trying to indicate how I got to all these things and what I was deriving from them, etc. But just as an example, you can see this on the card. I can go into the Devils and pull up his base card if you really need me to. But his 84 overall has acceleration 95, agility 92, balance 86, endurance 80, and speed of 95. So if you just look at the ones he's got here on the 72, those are 83, 80, 74, 68, and 83, all being exactly 12 points lower than what I just listed for his base card. Okay, so this card being 12 points lower on an overall rating, all of the underlying statistics show that this card has actually linearly regressed from that 84 overall. They all have come down exactly 12 points on all of those, including the tendency ones. So including aggression, discipline, fighting skill, including the awareness stats, including anything as far as stick checking or body checking, strength, durability, as well as poise, and it doesn't necessarily matter usually for most wingers, but face-offs as well. So that is something that I would have known exactly, and it would have taken me 2 seconds to figure it out, having not seen this card. Maybe if I didn't even have access to the game, let's say, I don't know, I guess in this case my PS4 would have to have been on the fritz or something, because I was going to say if I lost internet connection, which was definitely possible. We had severe storms and floods here today, but I guess, knock on wood, I don't know, whatever, it didn't cause any connectivity problems for me. But yeah, I guess I couldn't say fully like losing internet connection, because then somebody I guess would have had to have called me and asked me to tell them how the card compares to the base or whatever, which that phone call would never occur. So if I was unable to access my PS4, but I was able to get online and anybody was talking about anything, I could very clearly point this out just by simply asking a simple question in my mind, which was, okay, a Taylor Hall 72 that is basically an Evo has been released. Is it 100% perfectly linearly regressed from the base 84. If they didn't understand what that meant, I would say, here's the stats for the 84. Are you taking 12 off of those for the underlying stats in the 72? And hopefully they would be able to comprehend and also do that quick math themselves to be able to say, yes, that's the case. And so I would, just even by either saying that in general or giving me a few examples like I did for his skate stats, I would have been able to tell you exactly what each of these underlying stats are for the 72. At this point, you might be saying to yourself, whoop-de-doo, who cares? Totally with you. It's not a big deal. It's super, super easy to do. But the reason why I knew that this, proposed best fantasy hockey card in the group, even better than the Kovalchuk master set player card, according to some people, why I knew that it was going to be a hard sell or strong sell for me would be the case unless one of two things happened, that this starting point, this starting 72 overall card had, sort of anything but maybe specific things boosted. Spoiler alert, wouldn't need it for acceleration or speed, and wouldn't need it for his shot, and wouldn't need it for any of his hand deafness stats either, but would need it in some other areas that I feel like are kind of important and why it's a strong sell for me. So knowing that it had linearly regressed exactly 12 points just made it that much more clear to me that I didn't need to do that much more digging, because going back to, again, the EA access time that I was spending during that however many days it was, I felt like it was at least 5 days. Obviously not all of it was I connected to the game, because they only had 10 hours of that, but was able to pull that information off, as I said, get it into an accessible format, and then run it through the engine. Running it through the engine is essentially just what, again, it's very simple words in my mind, because I use things regularly, but I'm not trying to, if it sounds like I'm on a high horse or highfalutin, it's not the intention. But also, if you have any sort of tech/stats background, you know that things that I'm about to say are extremely elementary. So what I did was essentially a linear progression model, doing all of the things that would go along with any sort of linear progression. So seeing that there were already the first set of informs, I think, that were shown on that one, that were effectively +2. The things that I was looking at first, because I needed to sort of parse out my time and ensure that I was focusing on the right things. I was looking at mostly all upgrades being +2, regardless of what the card started at. Again, either 80 or up to 87. So 80s would become 82s, 87s would become 89s, and so forth, all the way up until 99. And then also assuming that once they reach 99, even if any other 99s come out after that, all of the underlying stats would still remain the same. They wouldn't get further boosts. If it plays like 19 did, we could probably expect that some of those pure end game cards, after plenty of people have actually left the game completely already, could have successive 99s released that give additional boosts to their underlying stats. Maybe not the best example, but the first one that pops off in my head was the card that started as a monthly reward legend card, the Mark Messier, which turns out to be pretty decent starter card here in 20 as well, at least in my opinion. I guess maybe I'm just feeling or saying that because mine happens to be untradeable, and I'm not a fan of untradeable cards, particularly this year in 20. But the legend card that we all got, as long as you logged in often enough and probably X amount of the time also picked up your daily doing your dailies, the daily objectives. You did enough of those in that month, whatever that month was. I forget off the top of my head. It could have been as early as October or November. I don't remember. I know it was pretty early on though. We all got a legend, Mark Messier. Great, fine, fantastic. And then in July, you were able to. Let's see. Hold on a second. Am I getting this right? There might have been one step in between this and that one that I'm forgetting. But in July, whatever level that Messier had either bumped up to, or you just even started off as what we received from the monthly rewards, in the July monthly rewards, you were able to use X number of collectibles to boost the Messier card up to a 99 overall free agency card, playing for. I always forget. One of the two outcomes is as a Rangers card, and the other one was something else, right? Canucks, I believe, were the two. I forget which is which. I think Canucks came first. Rangers came second. Pretty sure that's the case. So in July, you could turn him into a Canucks alumni, and he was a 99. But again, in my opinion, he wasn't a pure 99. He was missing some of his underlying stats, getting up to or close enough to 99. And in fact, that was sort of proven by August, the monthly collectibles. If you, in fact, had already done the upgrade to Messier for the, I believe, Canucks alumni version, you could then turn that in and destroy it in the process, but turn that in with other monthly collectibles to get another 99, who I believe the second one, again, was with the Rangers. I'm almost 100% positive it was Canucks and Rangers, and I could be getting the order of those wrong, of which one came first, which one came second, but point is, one was a Canucks alumni, one was a Rangers alumni. As far as everything goes, those were really the only differences, aside from the fact that some of the underlying stats got additional boosts to them. And for me, it became almost a pure, or in truth, an actual pure 99 in August if you did those. And as I already said, for 20, I'm not a fan of untradeable cards in general. This isn't about that though. In this video, I'm just pointing out that particular card in 19, as were all the monthly legends, were untradeable, with the obvious exception of in August, if you'd saved up almost all of the collectibles that you got in that month. You could have picked one of any of the 6 that were getting upgrades in that month, and they allowed those to be tradable cards, so they actually made it onto the marketplace for the first time. The only point that I was using in that was one example, and there are others that I think anybody that kind of finished the game in 19 and played through the end of the summer, or just played in the end of the summer, maybe didn't play before that, would likely be aware that was something that happened with the Mark Messier card specifically. And so there was a 99 that was available that was created in July, and then I think almost objectively a better 99 was available the next month. So I don't think it's completely out of the question, even with brand new folks working on content and stuff like that, and brand new content. With this being, I feel like different, but a similar feel to the Evos, but different. I think that the chance for any 99s that will come out to have different, at least different with synergies, but probably in some cases also better in terms of the underlying stats that didn't get a chance to max out. And I will promise to get to those for Taylor Hall, even though it's been on your screen the whole time and you could have figured out for yourself any of them for him. Any of those getting kind of extra boosts on successive 99s to be able to bring them up. I don't expect, however, that the fantasy hockey cards are going to do that. I feel like once they get up to 99, if they score another goal, there won't be any additional changes to the card. It would be kind of cool, again, outside of those things that maybe you don't want to have maxed out at 99, such as aggression, discipline, but if those are going to go up, you probably would want fighting skill to go up with it. For any of the underlying stats that don't get to 99 when the card gets to 99 and another goal is scored, that maybe all of the underlying stats would continue to go up +1 for every goal. That's a potentiality. I just don't think that there's a high likelihood of that happening. However, I do think that it's completely possible that there'll be some different types of 99s for a variety of different cards, true endgame, sort of after the regular season in the NHL, that could potentially boost specific underlying stat categories that didn't have quite the same max on other versions of 99. Okay, so back to the actual point here. Taking all of those cards, putting them in through a linear progression model, the main thing that people would want to know, and definitely want to know in this case for these fantasy hockey cards, is what would the 99 overall look like? What would the underlying stats be? And then based off of that and all of the other information as far as, again, height, weight, handedness, position, maybe play style like sniper if you care about that kind of thing. What would that look like with an overall 99, right? Kind of the main question. And I had that answer for every single card. However, I also had the answer for, when certain aspects would get to a 99 on the underlying stat prior to the overall getting boosted to 99. In almost every case, again, it's going to be the skate stats that are going to do that first. So speed, as an example, almost across the board, there's plenty of cards that will get a base of 99 speed, even if the highest overall rated card that particular player ever gets is not as high as 99. And Taylor Hall is an example of that, which should be kind of obvious from the fact that I already said his base 84 has 95 speed. So again, linear progression, meaning it moves up the same amount on the underlying stats for every one of the underlying stats as it does on the overall rating, means that as soon as he gets basically +5 off of his base would be when his base speed would max out at 99 because it's a 95 already. Not needing any synergies at all for that to happen. It would just be a pure base speed of 99. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of chances from sort of normal progressions for you to have odd numbers like +5, but who knows? It could happen. And if it doesn't happen, then that means obviously two upgrades on the 84 up to 86 would mean that the base speed would be 98, and any other upgrade after that, to where the base goes to 88 or 90 or higher, would all have speed at 99. So hopefully you're starting to paint a picture here of what I'm talking about. So you do this linear progression model, you get to see how all of the 80 to 87 position player cards would progress, if they do progress at all. Obviously the actual base cards don't change. They're completely static. They don't change at all. I guess they may do something weird this year with content that could, I don't know, somehow change, but for now that's how they've always been. That's how it's going to be for those specific cards. But there's at least some chance if those players actually play games this year and aren't complete donuts every single time they go out there, they can have a chance at getting at least a single upgrade, whether it's +2 or +1 or whatever, it doesn't matter. That they'll have a chance to get something. And so there'll be later versions of the cards that'll come out if it does follow that linear progression model, in which you'll end up seeing that. I don't mean to muddy the waters here too much, and I didn't receive mine, and I kind of said it mostly jokingly on Twitter just earlier today in response to somebody else saying that they were missing theirs still also. I said that I don't have my hut cover choice set to choose from the three of Austin Matthews, Patrick Laine, and I believe Elias Pettersson. If I'm getting that correct. It's been like 3 weeks since I've looked at them, so I don't really remember. But I also said that none of the three would really be able to make my team at this point, anyways. So it's kind of a moot point, and those do not progress. Your hometown heroes all progress, but that is super obvious what happens there because they all get +1 they all start. They're all exactly the same as far as their overall. They're all 83s overall, and they all progress their overall rating +1 every month. Hopefully happening for the first time in a few days here on October 1st, and then again on the first of every month, all the way up until April, at which point they become overalls of 90. And so effectively any stat that they have on the 83 card that is a 92 or higher would get maxed out at 99 on that 90 overall card that they'll have in April. And they will not progress any further than that. They will max out at 90 overall, and the underlying stats will not get progressed any further than that either. So that is another example of something that is going to progress. However, those cards are untradeable. Everyone is only supposed to. We've seen a couple of examples of people that for some reason have more than one, but generally everyone's supposed to have one. It's supposed to be untradeable. You made a choice of whichever one representing any of the 31 teams in the league, and you're stuck with that choice then, and it'll progress again from 83 to 90 with +1 each month all the way up until April. Just using that as the first example that we had of progression of an actual card, which is what we have here in the fantasy hockey cards, as opposed to, I believe that the linear progression model works in general for all cards, even if they don't have a hometown hero, and they don't for now, maybe don't ever get a fantasy hockey card. Generally, you'd expect that the highest end cards, again, what I mentioned in the beginning, the same as every year in the last few years, the Crosbys, the McDavids, the Ovies, the Kucherovs, and stuff like that, are very likely not going to receive a fantasy hockey card. I mean, with with the amount of goals being scored by Ovi, and even the crazy output from Kucherov last year, they to play it safe for EA. I'm just spitballing here, but it seems like if they had a fantasy hockey card like in week 2 next week, either one of them, but let's just say Ovi because he tends to go heavier on the goals more so than the assists, and therefore points in general don't count for anything. It's just goals. So yeah, Ovi, you could give him a base of like a 19, 20 overall, whatever the lowest overall that the game comes with. If there's even something as low as 50, I think I've seen some that are certainly under 60, like 55 maybe. You can give Ovi a fantasy hockey that's 55, and if he stays healthy, he technically only, quote unquote, only needs 44 goals scored before that card turns into a 99. So it's one of the many reasons why people are thinking that it's unlikely you'll see any of those kind of cards pop into this new variety of Evos this year. So I'm sort of losing my own train of thought here as to where I was with this, but I, again, did the linear progression model to see what would happen to all those cards as they progress, and then what they would max out at. And what they would max out at is kind of the point here for the Taylor Hall, and was mostly the point that I made without getting into all the specifics and the quote-unquote technical, even though and to me it's as elementary as just using a calculator and typing in 2 + 2 = and getting a result. So I didn't talk that much about the technical aspects of it in the buy or sell for the Kovalchuk Master Set Player Fantasy Hockey card. But again, it's a linear progression model. All the underlying stats go up the same number of points as whatever the increase in the overall rating is. And it's very easy, I feel like, to see in these fantasy hockey cards because they're going to go up 1 for every goal. If we just go with the easiest version of that no matter how many goals are scored, if you got a multi-goal game, if you've got a multi-game week, that every single goal will count for adding 1 to the overall, and then therefore adding 1 to the overall underlying stats. It's very easy to see the progression, right? So let's now talk about Taylor Hall specifically and why it is a hard sell for me. And part of this could kind of start to could start to speak to my own personal views or preferences or whatever, but it has nothing to do with my expectations for his performance this year on the Devils. Clearly, he had an Evo last year, and it's one of the few Evos actually in the entire game outside of the quote-unquote prospects that didn't necessarily have much playing time, or maybe were defenders and didn't have much opportunity for informs during the course of the year, and didn't get a Team of the Year card or anything like that could get a final end game boost or anything like that. Taylor Hall specifically was one of the very few Evos that did not progress up to 99. He didn't finish the season, so that was effectively the main reason, if not the only reason, why that didn't happen. So being a 72, to get to 99, he quote-unquote only needs 27 goals scored for that to happen. If your whole thing is about finding out when he's going to have +1 added to his synergies, especially because those are both team-based synergies, and in fact, in my opinion, they're two of the ones that I'm not going to say are as key for true end game, but they are for me two of the kind of three that I didn't focus on as much early game in the beginning, and what I have active on my team at the moment. The two that I do that with are one-timer efficiency and and sustained pressure. So 1T and SP, both needing 10 points to activate. The bottom one here for Taylor Hall, Wrecking Crew WC, also requires 10 points to activate. However, the one above that, the TK, the Takeaway Kings, only needs 8 points. So, for sort of any team-based synergies for these players that could be getting a +1 to them, even though honestly I do feel like Taylor got a little shortchanged in the sense that he does have team-based synergies for both of those, and that is cool, but there are plenty of these going to be available in which they're going to have 3 synergies to start with. The Kovalchuk has 3 synergies, and if I recall correctly, it's 2 team-based synergies and a player-based synergy. The player-based one might have been like Breakout Master or something like that. I forget actually off the top of my head, or maybe I'm completely off on this, and I don't know, because it's not. I'm now into the next day. It's now Saturday here, so I think I'm starting to lose my my train of thought more than I should. However, those 2 team-based synergies would certainly be ones that someone like myself who is focusing on synergies would be looking to get activated in addition to the ones that I already have later on in the game. So as far as end game goes, they would be ones that I would look for while maintaining 1T and SP, and then picking up for the boys, which I think is kind of the most important end game synergy, and that's a little bit of a quick foreshadowing about what I think is lacking in Taylor Hall's card when it becomes a 99. And then from there, these other 2 team-based synergies are clearly helpful. And so, having a card that was already on your team and already playing, was on your squad, you were already active with the card, and then just from getting an extra goal once he was at 94, moves up to 95, also coming up with +1 to both of these team-based synergies can certainly help out. This card alone, when it becomes a 95, will be 2 of the needed 8 points for Takeaway Kings, and the other one obviously being 20%, 2 out of the 10 required for Wrecking Crew to be activated. So having said that, we'll move past synergies, we'll move past what the card would look like at a 95. All that anybody really cares about is what would it look like at 99. And as I said, he quote-unquote only needs 27 goals for that to happen. I'm not necessarily going into his underlying stats in any previous years to try to give evidence as to why I think it's not necessarily a lock, but a pretty decent chance that he's going to be able to pull that off, and might actually be able to have such a breakout year, particularly if he gets front loaded with high performing games. You could get those 27 and that 99 overall relatively early into the NHL season. Even if it's kind of halfway in or at least before the All-Star break and stuff like that. You'd be potentially looking at a 99 that you could have on your team, likely before there's that many more 99s out there. Certainly before the potential deluge flood of nothing but 99s that kind of came in 19 could also happen in 20. So what is the actual point? Why do I think that this is always a strong sell? Besides the fact that it's going for a lot of coins currently, and that's part of what I would factor in. Because if it was cheap, then it's fine. I would still probably take it, because when I get into specifically what the 99 would look like, again, needing 27 or more goals to get there, if I get this free, not packed, because if I pack it and it's going for a lot of coins, I'm selling it, which is why I'm sticking to the fact that for me this is a strong sell. But if for some odd reason, I don't really know how this would happen, but if for some reason I end up with an untradeable version of the card, I won't be mad at that. I certainly won't be looking to put it into any sort of re-roll sets or anything like that. So I'd hang on to it, and when it eventually could become a 99, I'd be perfectly fine having the card. However, it's a strong sell for me in the sense of if I do pack it or otherwise attain it in a tradable format, regardless of what it's selling for at that time, and I could maybe try to determine when I think his overall and his underlying stats are up to a point of sort of max value that I could sell it for, and without getting into too much of the market mechanisms and how that relates to sort of finance and econ stuff. But part of what you'd have to think about there is the time duration that it would take to get from like at the starting point of 72 to whatever I think that sort of tipping point of maximum value would be. You'd have to look at sort of the opportunity cost of being able to sell it today, right now, for its current value, compared to what you sell it off in that future, and what you could have done with those coins during that time when you hadn't sold it and you held on to it for that higher value. Plus, clearly, a person that didn't even finish last season, I think you have to at least have in the back of your mind a consideration of potentially looking to dump the card at a moment's notice if he ever does have any sort of injury or other thing that could pop up that would make it look as though he's not going to be able to finish this year either. But all that aside, let's talk about what his 99 is going to look like, right? So as I've pointed out about 7 times or more already, to get to 99, he's going to need 27 or more goals. And I'm saying goals, Goals, goals scored, goals that he scores that are attributed to him and that become official goals from a scoring perspective after the game and after everything's analyzed and stuff like that. When there's certain things like deflections and anything else like that could be up for review even post game, as far as who you're going to actually attribute those goals to. So to get to 99, despite the fact that yes, I did use my linear progression model, I used an engine and a database to create that outcome for every single card. When you're looking at a one-off, you don't have to have my information and my database to be able to figure it out, because it is straight line, easy to do elementary math, right? So what you do here on any of the underlying stats is simply just add 27 points to any of those stats. A quicker way to get to an easier result is to look at everything that is 72 plus over there on the right side in all 3 of those columns. Anything that's 72 plus, you know right off the bat those are all going to max out at 99. Either the 72s like slapshot power and slapshot accuracy, as well as deking, hand-eye, and passing. All 5 of those will max out if it becomes a 99. So when it becomes a 99, those will max at 99. However, they will not max until it's 99. When it's a 98, they'll be 98. When it's a 90, they'll be 90. That's what linear progression means, right? So part of the reason why it's quicker and easier to just immediately look towards those things that are 72 and above, those will be maxed on a 99. So that covers most all of the skate stats. It covers 4 of the 5. So acceleration, agility, balance, and speed will all max if the card becomes a 99. And the shot stats, pretty close. I already pointed out the slap shot accuracy and power will finally max when it becomes a 99. The wrist shot accuracy will actually max when it becomes a 98. So clearly at 99, it will still be maxed at 99 also. Wrist shot power is going to be 1 off. It's going to barely miss it, and it will not progress any further than a 98 overall on wrist shot power. And no, that is not the reason why I think that it's a strong sell. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with the card that is generally maxed on their skate stats, pure speed, acceleration, agility, balance, and also max for the most part on the shot stats, with wrist shot power being 98. I think if those were the only things that you were thinking about, it's perfectly fine. And I don't besmirch you for having or begrudge you, I think is the way to say that, for going ahead and picking up this specific card, assuming that you're going to get it up to 99. You're going to hold on to it the entire time until it gets to 99, and then you'll find yourself with a pure speed card that's also basically a pure shot card also. And frankly, it's not that hard to find synergies that are capable of giving that extra. You'd only need really a +1, but an extra boost to wrist shot power to turn that into a boosted 99 from the base 98. I already talked about the hand deftness stats in the top middle there. Those are all going to max. The top 3, as I said, deking, hand-eye, and passing are all 72, so they're not going to max until he gets to exactly 99, but they will max at that point. Puck control will 99 when the overall becomes a 98. But despite being 6'1" and 205, like in previous years, he's not really having the stats that have you get on the body. Luckily, as I already mentioned, the balance will max out on that top end card. And if you think about like a 90 overall for him, balance will be 92 on that particular card. I don't know if you'd consider 92 balance to be end game, but certainly once he gets up to a 99, then you got no problems whatsoever as far as balance goes. That's more so in terms of his ability to not get taken off the puck from an offensive perspective. Conversely, from a defensive perspective, on taking others off the puck, strength and body checking are never going to max out. Okay, so that's a potential issue if you do care about the defensive aspects of a forward. Again, I'm going to kind of discount aggression, discipline, and fighting skill as the aggression being the next one on that list to talk about. You see that all 3 of those are under 72. I have no problem with that whatsoever, and it's twofold. I mentioned this for Kovalchuk also. One is I don't necessarily need or want my guys to be max on those 3 traits or attributes anyways. If they are going to be high in aggression and discipline, then I would probably want them to have that combined with a high fighting skill also, just because the higher that aggression and discipline tends to be, then with those tendencies, they will find themselves in the midst of fights more often. And if you have this card as a 99 and he's far and away your best overall card, and therefore maybe he's playing the best of any card that you have on your team, even if that takes you all the way into sort of February for that to occur, or later, maybe not till the very end of the regular season, if he's struggling to try to get close to a 30 goal performance this year. If you're like me, you may not want him jumping into fights that often. It's going to hurt you, certainly if you're playing any of the offline modes outside of squad battles, any of the hut challenges and stuff like that, where you're looking at generally 1 minute and 2 minute periods, so 6-minute games. You don't really want to lose your top guy for 5 minutes. Even if it happens in the first few seconds of the game, you're going to have less than a minute at the end of the game where he's going to be available for you. And after that first minute, if the game ends in regulation, he'll never be available. It's the same thing as taking a game misconduct and being kicked from the game. Obviously, it's not exactly the same as game misconduct. If it does go to overtime and or shootout, they're able to participate in that. Whereas if they get a game misconduct, they can't. They're already in the showers. So that's part of it. But if you're focusing on the competitive aspect and or the offline squad battles, all of that is generally 20-minute periods, 60-minute games. As I mentioned with the Kovalchuk, luckily not an actual hour of real life time to play those games. But the fact that they are 20-minute periods, clearly you're only losing, just on one fight alone, you're only losing five out of the 60 minutes in regulation, which isn't as drastic of a difference. But if he's your top player, and if he would have been on the ice for most of those 5 minutes, anyways, you could find yourself in a competitive disadvantage versus whomever you're playing if they had somebody who wasn't as key to their squad that got into the fight with you, regardless of which one of the two of you ended up winning the fight, just based off of those players not being available during those 5 minutes. That could be potentially a problem, which is why I say I don't really care about aggression and discipline getting up to 99, and I lump in fighting skill with that as well. But again, if they're going to have high aggression and discipline, if they're going to find themselves jumping into fights, then you might as well have some good skill to go with it as well. But I'm going to discount those three for now. Durability, as you see, is definitely not 72. We'll circle back to that in 2 seconds here. Awareness is basically fine in my opinion. I already mentioned, I think, that the offensive awareness is 72, and so that will max at 99 when the card maxes at 99. Very clearly, based off of what they've done here this year and last year, EA doesn't really feel like Taylor Hall is all that either active or good, depending on how you look at it from a defensive standpoint. But you see this card has a face stat for defensive 68, and the defensive awareness is also 68. I pointed this out in a previous video that I did and showed specific other card examples that what I saw generally was not where defensive awareness was always exactly the same number as what was shown for the face defense stat, but it was very often the same. And when it wasn't the same, it was generally one-off. So it was either, where that face of defense showing a 68 on the card, you'd come in and you'd see a defensive awareness. If it wasn't 68, it would most often be 67 or 69. It'd be right there, really close. But however, 68 is still, less than 72. It's in fact 4 less than 72. So defensive awareness for him is going to max at 95, which isn't bad in my opinion for an end game card from somebody who you might not be wanting to focus that much on defense anyways, but who you don't want to be completely slacking either. However, you're going to need him to get up to 99 to get that 95. And he's really not. He's not bringing it on the rest of the kind of defensive stats either. Shot blocking is 63, stick checking is 68, so it's the same as defensive awareness. That'll max at 95. Face-offs is 63. Doesn't really matter that much for most non-centers. There are a couple wingers that have very good face-off stats. And so we'll just kind of push past face-offs here for a second. And as I already said, I already got rid of discipline and fighting skill. So just talking about shot blocking, that's actually, at 63, it's even 5 fewer than defensive awareness and stick checking. So that is going to max out at 90 over on the 99 overall card. So if you're looking for him to kind of get back with that speed and to get active with with decent size 6'1", 205, it's depending on your play style and your strategies and stuff like that. Generally, he's not going to be set up with his underlying stats and tendencies to be able to do that at a high level until he gets closer to that end card of the 99 overall. But let's get to the ones that I kind of skipped over that I feel like are the reasons why this is going to be a strong sell for me. Those key tendencies or attributes, for me at least, are going to be endurance, durability, and poise. Those three specifically. Particularly, in my opinion, this is when it gets subjective. Say that again to make sure I'm very clear on which word I'm using there. And it could be, kind of related to my opinions as far as kind of play style or whatever. However, I think that this is sort of going to be the part of the differentiators for any sort of end game cards, whether they're 99 overall or not. And so, durability, for example, at 50 means that he's going to be 22 points off even on a 99 overall. So now you got to take 22 off of 99. You're talking about a 77 durability stat on a 99 overall card. That is just severely lacking in my opinion, but I think that almost can't be argued with the fact that it is, severely lacking. And so having the durability being that low, part of that could play into how easily or how often or whatever he gets injured in any particular game, and therefore is generally going to be out for that particular game until you can finish the game and boot up a healing card and get him back out there onto the ice. And that could or maybe I'd say should, but could and if that's your thing, would be a factor for you. For me, the durability also though is in terms of his ability to get back up when he gets his butt put on the ice. As you saw from the balance stat, early on, if you're trying to play with this card, and most people are even saying who are in favor of this card and other fantasy hockey cards, are saying that you're not really looking to play these cards early on. You're more looking to watch their games and to get excited when they're putting in goals, so that the cards can progress and they can start to be good enough to be able to actually make your squad. Assuming that happens before they get up to 99, if they're even able to do so. But again, that balance stat won't max out at 99 until he gets a 97. If he gets just only up to 95 and gets the additional points to synergy that people might be looking for, in that particular case, pardon me, his balance would be a 97 on the 95 overall card. And I think I misspoke by saying that it would max. No, I didn't misspeak. Sorry, I'm good. So yeah, the 95 with the synergy boosts would have a balance at 97. I think that's perfectly fine, and that's if that's not end game for you, it's certainly pretty close to it. And I think balance is definitely a key stat, particularly for forwards that you might be looking to kind of be holding onto the puck as much as possible in the offensive third to look for those opportunities to either rip a shot off or to find maybe find an open man or to find the beginning of a cycle to again, just the whole point is to just try to get the puck in net eventually. But at 74 to start with, for me personally, I think it's terrible, but not to be unexpected from a 72 overall. And so it doesn't really take that long. You get +6, you get this thing up to a 78, and now you're talking about 80 balance. Maybe that's not good enough for you if you want 5 more. On top of that to get it to 85. Then you're talking about once the card gets up to 83, and he's seen 11 goals at that point. But generally, I would say that the balance is basically fine. He's still going to get knocked off the puck, you know, sometimes. He's not going to be unable to get knocked off even when he maxes out at 99 with 6'1", 205, unless they're doing something with the game and you know, bumps, incidental contact, and just the ability to hit the puck carrier and knock him down. If that goes away, then yeah, then the 99 balance will probably be one of the cards that you definitely wouldn't be able to knock down. But assuming you can knock him down and take him off the puck at least a little bit, that'll be a thing. But again, going back to the strength and body checking, never maxing out. You know, luckily, at least being able to get up into the 90s when it maxes at 99, but not maxing out, means that anything he's looking to do on the defensive side of things, he's going to be you know, not maxed on those, and it shouldn't be that hard to see that you know, when he's not holding the puck, and also when he's trying to get on the body defensively. Maybe he does knock the guy down, but maybe he knocks himself down in the process. Maybe he, you know, you think with good balance that wouldn't happen as often, but victim of circumstance or whatever, if he goes to knock somebody down and his progress kind of takes him into another player, particularly if it takes him into the skates of the goaltender, if he's near the near the net on either side, offense or defense, it's pretty easy to get kind of tripped up in that case. I feel like no matter who I'm playing with, any of my cards, almost all of them have a potential during the course of any particular game to fall down at least once. And this durability stat, amongst other things, is kind of related to their ability to get up off their butt when they get knocked down. So the fact that it's going to be as severely lacking as it is, even as a max 99, I think is important. However, it's for me right now the least important of the three that I'm using to point out here. Okay, and the sort of interesting thing for me is that as I talk about these three, I'm going from sort of least important at the moment to sort of most important end game, but I think they all kind of matter to a certain extent. So next up, as quickly as I can go through this, and we're going to be done then at that point, so we've already killed the music here, is going to be Poise. Poise is 65 on his 72. And again, as I already said, you know, these are all linear regressed from his base 84. And on that 84, the Poise was 77. You know, I mean, it should make sense. You just add 12 to both the overall as well as the underlying stats. You add 12 to 65, you get to 77. So another way to look at that is when he gets his 12th goal, assuming that he does, this isn't just about Poise here, it's about every underlying stat. Upon his 12th goal, this card, despite having a potential to upgrade further, will be exactly the same as his base card, just with different synergies. That outside of the potential to grow and the potential to progress, the only differences. So I'm not trying to put a jinx on him, but if he has a repeat of last year but worse, if he puts up 12 and then gets knocked out for sure, without question, for the rest of the year, he'll never progress any further than what his base card is. And so then you kind of have to look at what those base card stats are and whether you even want to hang on to the thing if it was tradable at that point. I think it'd be an even more of a hard sell at that point if he ends his season 12 goals or less at that point in the season. But that's for other people to decide. They like the 84 base card perfectly fine, and I'm more than happy with them continuing to buy that from me on the auction market. However, the Poise at 65, it's not just that it will, quote, only be a 77 after 12 goals and up to 84, but you take this all the way up to 99, you know, it's a stat that is exactly 7 points off of the overall. So luckily it will get into the 90s. However, it's going to max out at 92 on a 99 overall. And as you see, we're starting to talk about ones on these three that get closer and closer to 99. Poise, for me, is something that I didn't really focus as much as I probably should have in 19, or maybe it wasn't as much of a factor in 19. The things that they say about Poise, certainly seem to be the case. But generally speaking, if you only look at it from the perspective of thinking of poise kind of in terms of, clutch, whether it's just a high pressure situation at any point in the game, or if it's, end of period, end of game, overtime, shootout, whatever it is, if it's any of those things, supposedly poise is supposed to kind of be like clutch in those situations, how much poise they have in those high pressure situations. If it's just about their ability to put pucks on net, that alone is going to be kind of significant for any card. If you got pretty decent speed and you got good to potentially great shot, the more poise that you have, just across the board, I think is going to be something that you want to have, something that I definitely want to have on all my cards. And so even if it's something that you would maybe say is not necessarily a high pressure situation in the game, I didn't program the game. I don't have any inside information from the devs, so I don't know necessarily exactly when they would say that would get triggered. There's a chance that poise matters during the entire game, and it's kind of their ability to be quote unquote clutch throughout the entire game that you play, regardless of who you're up against, and kind of the importance to you from a gameplay perspective of that game. If you're playing a Hut Champs rookie challenge that's offline and just gives you a few coins on rookie for a minute or two or whatever, you might not think that any point in that game is important. But the ability to, again, at minimum, put pucks on net generally, and do the other things that are going to be kind of important to you, being able to have things like your balance combined with your puck control and puck handling, to mean less ability to get taken off the puck, and things like that could also be impacted by poise. So the fact that it's going to max out at 92, the best it can ever get is 92 on a 99 overall card. If he gets those 27 or more goals, an argument can be made that 92 is good enough for an end game card. But I would, I think I would suffice to say that it's certainly true for me, and it might be true for others, that you probably don't want to have all 18 of your position players not maxing out their poise. Even if in some sort of weird alternative universe, because this isn't going to be the case, you somehow have 18 players that are all, maxed however they're maxed. They're not going to get any more informs, or if they're fantasy hockey cards, they're already maxed up to 99. Basically, the easiest way to think about it is they're already 99s. You got 18 99s on your team, and they are whatever they are on all the rest of their stats. And every single one of them has poise of 92, well, in one sense, that kind of makes it a little bit easier for you in choosing your lines, and you know that no one particular player in your team is better than another when it comes to the poise tendency or attribute. But at least for me, that's not my ideal situation for my end game squad. I'm going to be looking for at least some players to be higher than that in poise, and there's some cards out there right now that are basically either at or above 92 in poise. If you do want to go ahead and look for those, and there would also be some in this sort of variation of Evo that certainly by the time they max out at 99 would be capable of getting the poise up to 99 also. And beyond that, we're going to get at least one more week of probably at least the exact same number of cards, if not more, next week for more fantasy hockey cards. And again, I was happy to share this information. Maybe by then, HutDB will have it available for you to be able to do also. But I'll know instantly when those cards come out, if they are the cards that are going to have these three stats as well as the other ones maxing out at 99. And in fact, mostly on the defensive side, I'll know right off the top of my head whether or not they're going to be the defenders who, for example, might have both slap shot and wrist shot power maxing out, but are going to be severely lacking on their accuracy. It's not the case for Taylor Hall, so I'm not trying to go off on a tangent there. poise being the second of the three ones that don't max out for hull that I think are very, very important for endgame. So we can finally finish this off here by talking about the last one. I've kind of already alluded to it a little bit. And luckily, it's going to be the highest one of the three in terms of what it's going to max out on in the 99, but it's not going to max at 99. And that is endurance. His endurance on this 72 is a 68. And if you need an additional reminder of exactly how this works for linear regression, his 84 has an endurance of 80. It's not that far off. In both of those you can see it's a -4. And to reiterate, when this card gets 12 goals exactly, whenever that happens, if it happens, whenever it happens, it'll be the same as the base card, and his endurance will be at 80. 68 is atrocious and doesn't really belong on anybody's team right now. I can't, the way I play at least, I can't even justify putting a card that has endurance that low on my fourth line or even on my third line on D, because they're going to be killing it for the rest of their line on how easily gassed they're going to be, and you have to kind of bring other people out. So even if you had it on your fourth line forwards, for example, and they were gassing and you weren't really looking to have the fourth line out there that often, and you're kind of using that as a way to make it just a short breather for say your top lines and maybe even your first line specifically, fine. But I mean, I that's a strat. I think it's not a dominant strategy. I think it's a suboptimal and dominated strategy. But whatever, you can do that if you want to. However, I think 68 is terrible. And again, most people would say they're not looking to pick up this card to play with it right away, even though it does have different synergies, and it in fact has two team-based synergies compared to the base, like every other base position player that only has +1 for a player-based synergy. And in fact, that 84, his player-based synergy is Breakout Master. So there's that. So those would be the two differences between the two cards. But if you had both of them right now, and you for whatever reason wanted to play with them, other than just trying them out, I would see no reason at all why you'd play with the 72 instead of the 84. And so in that sense, I could say it's probably the case that you'd say the same thing, pretty much at least for the first 8, 9, or 10 goals that he scores. For some people, it wouldn't be until he gets his 13th or 14th and gets above that 84 before he'd start using this card over his base card. And to be honest, he'll have at least one, if not more, informs of probably +2 or more that will have come out with also different synergies by the time he gets up to that level of goals. Most likely, it'd be tough to get that many goals and not find an inform during that time. So again, the point with this endurance being 4 off, it will be in the 90s. It will max at 95. My two biggest concerns with that are that, first off, that's only if and when the card becomes a 99. As I said, I'm not trying to put Tay here on blast or any shit like that. I'm not saying that dude's not capable of putting up 27 or more. He's capable of it for sure. Is he going to? I think there's a good chance of it. I don't know what that percentage is. I don't necessarily have to bet or bank on it anyways. But when he does that, it's, assuming that he does, it stands to reason, and this would be the case for most players, that if they are able to do that they're more likely to do that later in the year than they would even sort of mid-year. So you have to kind of wait. If you're factoring in what the 99 would look like, you're gonna have to wait until he gets to that point of having scored that 27th goal. Being able to score as many goals as he has years old in his age. And so the endurance being down to 95 on that 99, you might be thinking that I'm being nitpicky here. Um, Whether you think that that poise or durability, or both poise and durability, matter at all, or matter as much as I'm saying from an endgame perspective, fine. You don't necessarily have to agree with me on that. And then you can also say endurance at 95 is perfectly fine. Sure, if that's how you feel. However, again, you're going to have to wait until it becomes a 99 overall card for that to happen. And again, knowing what the 72 is going for, and that part of that consideration must be for some people either an assumption, expectation, or just a hope that the card will become a 99. And so, from a market standpoint, again, without trying to get into too much of that, it's kind of like figuring out the future value of the card, and then discounting it back to a net present value for what it should go for now, based off of that expected future value of a 99. And I feel like that, to a certain extent, is either happening, or it's just that he's such a big name, well-known player, that he's garnering that much more attention from his value currently on this terrible 72 card that is only good when it progresses. And my main point is that I don't think it's good enough when it does progress. Sure, his general skate stats, his speed and acceleration, etc., are going to max out. His power, his shot is basically going to max, and the wrist shot power again will be 98 on that 99. But it does require getting up to 99 for those to finally max out, as opposed to the skate stats that'll max out a lot sooner than that. And so I think that if and when the card does become a 99, even if it happens earlier in the year, maybe a midpoint in the year, maybe before the end of January, certainly if it happens before the new year and you get people coming into the game, that got gifts in the holidays and stuff like that, I think that you at that point you could probably get just a ton of value in the marketplace for the card at that particular point in time when that happens. And for me, I think that the value that would be available that I could sell the card for is almost always going to be more than what I would value it as, particularly because I don't think that it's the optimal card to have as an endgame card. Part of that for me personally is that he's a non-center left-handed shot. And again, when I was saying before that the face-off stats don't matter, they don't. They're -9. It's going to max at 90. I guess when it's a 99, you could potentially put him in as a center, but then where are you doing that, on the third or fourth line or something like that? It doesn't seem to be a really optimal position for what could be your highest overall rated card at that point. So for any forward, and I guess this would include defensemen as well, who you can't put on as centers, the defenders you can't put as a center except on special teams lines. The regular lines, you can at least put the wingers there. Again, I wouldn't really look to do that, and unless the game shifts where special edition cards, or cards that are getting informs or upgrades and stuff like that, which are technically also special cards, unless there's just like a ton, and really you really only need 4 of them, unless there's a ton of right-handed, big-bodied particularly, but just generally right-handed shots that are going to be amazing, unless there's a ton of those, you're looking at 2/3 of the cards that the game started with on forwards and defense are left-handed versus right-handed. And it's pretty close to that same sort of 66-33 when you break down each the forwards and the defense specifically. And that was maybe not my first tweet, but one of my first tweets that I put out this year on my Twitter handle was giving the overall numbers of those 80 plus position players on their handedness, and breaking it down forwards and defense, and then the total for the overall. And the total, again, as I said, is basically there's 2 left-handed shots for every 1 right-handed shot when you factor in all the 80 plus NHL playing position players. So for me, at least, the fact that he's left-handed means that and not really being a good option at any of the center positions means he's going to have to take one of the four winger positions in which I'm playing left-handed shots. It doesn't necessarily matter that I, for now at least, am still playing inverted, so my lefties are on the right and my righties are on the left. If I go back to standard or if I go to a mix, but I'm still generally playing the same sort of proportion where there's four lefties and four righties, but they kind of play on varying sides. I've seen that strat already going off this year, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. I don't think that it's one that I can say definitively is strongly dominated, but it isn't what I'm going with. So for me, right now I'm playing inverted, lefties on the right, and if I make a switch, it'll probably be to switch to standard. And I don't know off the top of my head why I would do that really. Don't have an interest in doing it at the moment, but that would just mean that the left-handed shots will move over to the left side, in which Taylor specifically would then be playing on his correct position, whereas players like Ovi, who are left wingers and right-handed, would then be on on the other wing and playing on in a position that's not listed as their primary position, in case you actually care about those things. One of the ways in which it can matter if you're pressed for time is if you're auto-filling to create your team. It auto-fills based off of the actual positions. So both Taylor Hall and Ovi are always going to get auto-filled over on the left wing if whatever criteria you put into the fill on the team build screen. If they match that criteria, they're going to be put into one of those four left wing spots. So that's pretty much it for me, is the fact that because he's left-handed, and it makes a slight difference, at least, even if it's not even a full kind of 2x differential for me. It makes a slight difference if he was right-handed, where I'd be a little bit more inclined to think that it'd be okay. But again, the endurance stat as end game after getting 27 goals, if and when that ever happens in this NHL season, and he maxes out at 99 overall, that endurance at 95, I really feel like as a base and potentially, not getting boosts, he's not getting any boosts from his synergies. He would, though, admittedly get a +3 if you've got For the Boys activated, and that's another reason why I think that that's such a key end-game team-based synergy to have activated. He doesn't have to have it, which he doesn't, as long as it's activated on the team that he's playing for. That 95 endurance suddenly becomes 98, and if being picky, yeah, I want endurance as well as poise and probably durability to be 99, particularly on a 99 overall card. But I can take it. I can take a 98. Whether that's boosted or pure, with again a preference to pure, a preference to anything that's in fact 96, 97, or 98, and is on a team where For the Boys can get activated, whether they have that synergy on their card or not. So you might feel like I'm totally beating a dead horse, and the dead horse was a stupid point to begin with in the first place. But maxing endurance at 95, I just feel like, again, if you thought about your entire end game team, all 18 of your position players, all 12 of your forwards, having an endurance that gets no higher than 95, you are absolutely going to find yourself in a little bit of a competitive disadvantage if you're playing a team that, this is completely hypothetical and not actually reasonable as far as what's going to happen in the game. But you could be up against a team that is exactly the same as yours, and the players are exactly the same. So they have a Taylor Hall the same way that you have a Taylor Hall, but they've got a different Taylor Hall. Theirs is 99, yours is 99, but yours is this one, this fantasy hockey one, that maxes out in endurance 95. Let's just kind of forget about the For the Boys synergy at the moment. They can boost that up a little bit for you. And they do that across the board. Every other player that you have, no matter who it is, if it's McDavid, or if it's Ty Ronning and it's Tim Heed, whoever it is that you're rocking with on the end game, even if they're 99s, whatever. Let's say that they are 99s. All 12 of your forwards are 99s. All 12 of the other players cards are also 99s and the exact same player. So if there's anything that's sort of specific to the player outside of maybe the base celly that they play the game with, you could say that they're essentially exactly the same. You give that player exactly the same across the board in all the stats, except that for whatever reason, their endurance on their version of Taylor Hall and their version of Tim Heed are all 99s across the board, all 12 forwards, and all of yours are 95. I mean, at a minimum, you're going to be seeing them being able to, pardon me, being able to be at least a little bit more creative in their line changing that they're doing. Their guys are going to get gassed, that less frequently, giving them more options in terms of who they can bring out and when, as well as you may even see them looking to like quote unquote hustle a bit more often, a bit more frequently, a bit more regularly, et cetera, et cetera. Just because they know that all their players have endurance of 99, and so they can kind of work them a little bit more, not just in terms of how long they might leave a specific line out to have an advantage versus who you're putting out or who they're expecting you to be put out, but also in terms of when they're out there, like just how much they might be working them and trying to kind of max out, reach that top speed and take advantage of what is going to be, again, for every card in the game that particularly at least the 80 pluses, every single one of them are going to max their speed out at 99, either by the time they get to 99, but in a lot of cases like Taylor Hall, even before they get to 99, the base speed will max out. So you want to take advantage of that, particularly if you've got acceleration either at 99 or close to it as well. In my opinion, you're going to want to take advantage of those kind of things, and the lower that the endurance tendency or trait or attribute, whatever you want to call it, you can still call it a stat if you want to, the lower that is, the less ability that you're going to have in managing your team and that particular player and how you play with that card. And so, as I said, you definitely might feel like I'm already beating a dead horse, and the dead horse didn't have much of a point to begin with. You might feel like I'm almost kind of making a straw man argument here or whatever, where it's not even it's not even a relevant point. But I think it's very important to note that it's not just that it's going to max at 95, which I find to be enough of a problem, especially with poise and durability also not getting maxed out, and those being even less than 95 between the two of them. It's also that you don't even get to 95 until he gets, again, those 27 or more goals and maxes out at 99. So, again, like I said, right now, I think I can click back. Am I in the out there? So there you go. Okay. The next four. A lot. I just, I wouldn't do it. I don't. Considering the way that there's two main ways that I think that you ought to be this particular card and any other card that you can get for 650, but this particular one, because it's kind of an Evo, and I've now talked about it for about 3 hours. The reason why there's two main ways to look at this, because it has the chance to progress, is compare what else you could currently get for that same 650,000 coins. You cannot argue with me. It's purely 100% objective truth and fact that if this 72 never progresses, if he fell down, I don't know, a flight of stairs earlier tonight, probably when trying to listen to this nonsense for the last 3 hours or something stupid like that, and he's out for the season, he's never going to progress past 72. Well, first off, his base card is going to be better overall, so there's that. But if it's always going to be a 72 card, the card for what it is right now, prior to getting any upgrades, prior to scoring any goals in the regular season and seeing any upgrades to the card, you cannot argue it's absolute truth that there are better choices available for you right now for those 650,000 coins. In fact, I mean, I can almost argue that you could fill your entire team with pretty decent choices, not necessarily end game, not the best cards in the game, but you could fill out your entire team for 650,000 coins right now. I mean, to be totally real, there's actually, you could probably pay only 1,000 coins per and have the low end gold players as all of your players. And if you're good enough at the game, you can still be competitive, I think. Because there's plenty of those that are decent enough right now. But if you're coming up against a team like mine, granted I don't have the skills to play well with it. If you come up against my team as it's currently configured in squad battles this week or next on Superstar, good luck with that. You're good enough, you'll beat me. You'll win by the necessary 5 goals. You'll get the 20 shots on goal. I don't know. You might even find a way to abuse the current goalie that I'm rocking with. That I'm gonna certainly look to improve before I get to endgame. That is one of the areas that I'm absolutely looking for an improvement on. But I think that there'd be some amount of people, a non-zero amount of people, if enough came up against my team as it's configured in squad battles this week, next week, playing against it on Superstar, there'd be a non-zero amount, which means it could technically be as low as 1 player that would come up against that in Superstar and would have to replay if they want to get the max number of points out of it. And you'd probably get a pretty decent difficulty rating boost as well for your overall points, because as you can see up at the top, my overall rating for my team is a 90. It's not it's not No Sleeves 12 Sleeveless Gaming at 92 and others that are up there as well. But it's still pretty solid overall. And as I said, I think it's pretty well organized. So that's one way to look at it, is what you could get for this right now for 650,000 coins. And I think it's just pure fact that if the card remains as a 72, that it's effectively a terrible purchase for 650,000 coins because of how many other great options that are out there for that price or lower, which could be end game cards even without progressing. And I would actually argue that, again, even if he gets as many as 12 or 13 goals, so he gets that 13th or 14th goal and he's suddenly finally above the rating of his base 84 card, which again, by the time he does that, you can hold me to it, I think it's highly likely that he'll have at least one inform that will be that much higher than 84 at that point as well. And so you're going to kind of be chasing those informs the entire way up to 99 potentially, because it starts so low at 72 and only increases with goals, and those goals are likely to result in informs, whether prime times, team of the week, and I haven't looked at his underlying stats to see if he's got any sort of milestones that could pop off with those, if they're even going to do milestones this year. But even so, that would be another part of my argument, that I feel like, until he gets at least that number, at least 13 or 14, possibly more goals, and that much more above the 84, would mean that, just even his base card that you could, right now you could potentially get for, somebody might be dumb enough to give it up for close to the sell now price, which should hopefully be above 1,000, but it may be 950. So I don't know. You could potentially get lucky to snipe one sort of, this time maybe in a couple hours, kind of off hours, except for versus the Europeans who are on the game right now. You could potentially snipe one for, I don't know, maybe like 1,200, the base 84, and you're likely not going to be paying a significant amount above that currently, as far as how the market got tanked this week, same as it did last week. But I would understand why plenty of people would see that there's definitely more value in this card compared to his base card. It at least has more potential, because the base card has no potential to grow, and this has, at least for now, some potential to grow, even though, again, it's going to need more than 12 goals for that potential to be better than the base card. And again, as it progresses up to those 12, 13, 14 goals, there's likely to be at least one release of a card of his that'll be higher than 84 overall, while this card is getting up there and progressing as well. But the main thing that I think you have to think about with this is it's 650,000 coins right now, and you look at what's currently available on the market right now for those amount of coins. I would argue that there are multiple choices that you can buy for that amount, and in some cases lucky enough to pay a little bit less, that are not just currently better than this card, but end game in some cases being close to better than what he could max out at 99. And again, with me assuming that that's not something that's going to happen, certainly by Thanksgiving. Although I mean, honestly, that'd be kind of cool if he rips off 27 goals before Thanksgiving comes. But I'm sorry, in Canada, I got to be specific here. I'm talking about American Thanksgiving. Anyway, I think that there's a couple that I'm thinking off the top of my head where they've gone for as much as 650. They could potentially be even less right now, that I think are certainly very obviously better right now, but also would be better for a good portion into the future. And if you were looking at this from an investment standpoint, and there's only this one item out there, I'd kind of like to assume that somebody else currently that has it that's willing to sell it, whether it's over here on the PlayStation side or whether it's over on Xbox, could potentially be giving this up for 500,000 coins as opposed to 650, and that puts it a little bit more in line for me as to what I think would be more reasonable to go with. But if you're looking to get this from an investment standpoint, which I will admit I fully made that mistake with Evos last year, and it severely cost me to the point where that's part of the reason why I didn't play a full year, and was basically crippled until the end of the year when there was that deluge of 99s that came out, and they weren't that hard to get, and luckily some of them were just upgrades, albeit untradeable, but upgrades from the quote-unquote free cards that were picked up during the course of playing during the month. The other thing that I would say is, again, even if you're looking at it like that as far as like an investment, you're saying, well, hey, now it's 650, even if it's as low as 500, but not if it's as high as, I don't know, 750 or closer to $1 million. I think it'd be, first off, you're maxed at, you can't sell any card for more than 10 million. So if you're paying $1 million for a card and you're doing it from an investment standpoint, obviously you got to look for a 10% markup from what you bought it as to be able to turn any sort of profit because of the 5% auction tax. But forgoing that, you ought to be looking at not just your return on investment, known as ROI, but also your risk return ratios. And I didn't intend to turn this completely into a market thing, but I think that some people are looking at this from a market standpoint. So I'm just adding this as my kind of last little disclaimer as I close off this little broadcast here. But you got to kind of look at your risk return ratios also. So I mean, if you look at the 91s that are in the game right now, the Gretzky and the Mario Lemieux, and you look at what they're going for. Even if you were to say turn I don't know, let's go with a 25% profit. So let's make it up and pretend like there is no auction tax and you don't have to factor that in. And you take either one of those cards selling for 1 million coins right now. Those are a lot of assumptions, many of which might not be true. But you do that and you choose whichever one you're going for, or I don't know, they're both exactly the same, and you get them both for exactly 1 million coins, and there's no 5% auction tax. And to be able to turn a 25% profit, you got to be able to turn around and sell that same card in the future for 1.25 million or more. Is that possible? Potentially. But again, with this particular card here, trying to do that same thing whether you want to be truthful and factor in auction tax or not. If you're doing it as an investment, not in the sense of buying it now for its future value to you on your team because you'd put them onto your squad and you'd play with the card, that's different than if you were buying it now, whether it's at 650 or lower or whatever, with the expectation that it'll be worth more in the future. Just thinking, hey, it's 650 right now, it's 72. Maybe in a couple weeks time he's already ripped off at least a goal or a few goals, and suddenly now you're looking at, say, a 73, 74, 75 with the potential to grow, as opposed to the base card, which doesn't grow, and it was going for 650 now. Then why wouldn't it go for more after ripping off a few increases? Well, when it gets those increases, I would guess, and I think that it'd be kind of safe to assume that when it does get an increase, however they're going to handle that, I'm not getting into that tangent right now, but however they handle when the increase comes, once we've seen one of those happen and we get a sense of how to expect that, we know that he's got at least a goal, he's had a few goals already, he's got another goal now, it's going to get another increase. It's not outside the realm of possibilities that the general prices that you would see on the auction market, prior to scoring that goal and knowing that there's going to be a +1 boost coming whenever it's going to come, based on how they're going to handle it, almost instantaneously in the market, you could potentially see an increase in the prices. I would argue, however, that there's this and plenty of other cards have the same exact thing, even when they don't have the ability to progress, is that generally speaking, they come out on day one more than any other day, but on day one, and then sometimes for a few days after that, sometimes maybe even for a week or two after that, at much higher values than they would have later, and particularly the cards that don't progress, as they're being compared to other cards that come out later that are just better in other ways, whether it's overall rating or underlying ratings as well, or whatever it is. As better and better cards come out, it brings down the value of the existing card base, and that's why a lot of people pointed out last year and are reiterating it this year, that all cards essentially have diminishing value. It's kind of technically looked at the full term of kind of diminishing marginal value, as well as diminishing comparative value to whatever the rest of the market, the other cards, whatever. But the point is diminishing value, right? So this new card that might be the only form of Evo that we see, again, outside of the untradeable, where you can only select one hometown hero that will all progress from 83 up to 90 by the time you get to April, excluding that as the only other exception that's a little bit differently handled or whatever. If these fantasy hockey cards are going to be the only progressive cards, the only thing, as Sleeveless Gaming pointed out in his introduction to this event, the closest thing that we've ever seen in the NHL series towards having dynamic ratings for any player cards. I think it's definitely a true statement. I like the way it was worded. So because of that, even though technically, like other cards, it ought to have some diminishing value, because the actual rating, and then once it gets to 95, also the synergies are going to be increased as long as he's healthy and playing games and capable of scoring some goals. And I won't reiterate for the millionth time that number is going to need to be more than 12 for sure. And obviously 27 plus is optimal. As that happens, I would expect price fluctuations. Even after if he scores sort of only 1 or 2 goals in, say, maybe even in the first 2 or 3 weeks of this season, not just because that might not look like a very good goal per game clip that he's at, to be able to achieve that 27, but for other reasons as well. I would I would venture to guess that even with the 73 or 74 that it could be in that case, could potentially be going for on average less than what it's going for right now. Um, whereas conversely, not not for good reasons. So I will say sort of irrational exuberance. I would say if he rips off a Hattie in the first game of the season, which is within the realm of possibilities, he's capable of doing it. He's on a team where it can happen as well. Um, and I would guess, especially knowing that that means that that's going to be a 75 overall rated card at that point with future potential to grow, that would seem more likely to reach whatever level you'd want. If it's 27 and a 99, or if it's anything kind of between that and between 75 and 99, it would just seem that much more likely that that would occur again, given that he plays the full year, doesn't get injured, that sort of thing. Um, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities that the price on the auction house for anybody that is still willing to sell after that first game could be high. I know for me, being that it's already if I can get 650, if I had this card right now in a tradable format, I can get 650 coins for it. I am absolutely selling it for that. I don't even really care that maybe 15, 16, 17 goals in, which could be quite a while into the season, that he could be as much as even a million or more, and that's a significant quote unquote loss that I missed out on from having sold it earlier. I still would be pretty much okay with that choice because I think that it is the game theory optimal choice at the moment, given the information that we have and the potentials of what could happen to this card, and not having full information and not knowing exactly what else could come out. Quite frankly, and I think that I might not be alone in this. Most of us are probably in the same boat, that I don't even know what week 2 fantasy hockey cards are going to be released. We got another one that just jumped on the market. That was fun. Thank you very much. HC Nushi, so European player most likely, jumping on and trying to induce someone to put it up for a start price of a million, and eventually probably trying to bilk the full million and a half out of them, giving us 12 hours from now, which would take it just shy of the server reset tomorrow. And knowing that if he was paying attention, that for the first 3 hours and 40 minutes of that, people have an opportunity to have a buy now for, uh, you know, basically exactly 65% of his start price. So it's an interesting choice that he made, assuming that he actually looked at this and saw the difference in the two prices. And honestly, for all I know, they could be basically the same player on two different accounts, or just part of a group, or otherwise, working together with each other, to put this one out there as a listed price, knowing full well that it's very unlikely that it would sell for that, but being more than happy to take the coins if it does, in an effort to try to get this one sold, since we've seen for at least the last whatever it is, 20 or 30 minutes that I've been out here on this, that it hasn't sold. So I'll come back into the card here one last time. None of these underlying stats should surprise you at all. You could have already looked at the 84 and seen what this was, and seen that when it was showing as a 72, that you just have to take minus 12 out of all those stats. And if you were like me, and you whether you knew the specifics or not, if you just knew, hey, I know the 84 is basically a quick card, fast. I mean, base of 95 speed, I think is considered definitely a fast card, and unfortunately, kind of lacking a little bit on shot, kind of mid range, mid 80s on the shots. Same sort of deal on the hand deftness, and then just lacking on everything else with checking and defense and stuff like that. And then obviously on the ones that I pointed out that I think are very key for endgame, with in order of least important to most important, in my opinion right now: durability, and then poise and endurance. Even though I could kind of go back and forth between poise and endurance, depending upon how many other cards are going to be available in the market that are going to have either max endurance or pretty close to it, but they're going to be lacking in poise. That would change my opinion and make me feel like I'd want to start focusing on things like poise more than endurance. But that's very difficult to do, if only because for me, at least so far, I know 100% of the games I play in that endurance plays a factor of some sort. You can kind of feel it, you can kind of sense it, and poise is there. It's something that I'm definitely focusing on, and I never have before, but maybe less than I am with endurance. So that's kind of where I'm at with this right now. Those are basically the three why I say that I don't feel like it's the best end game card that it can be, even when it gets up to 99. But also with not just the shot stats, including the wrist shot power that will not max out and will end up at 98, but also sort of all the shot stats really not maxing until it gets up to 99. And same thing with the hand deftness, with deking, hand-eye passing, and puck control will technically get 99 on a 98. I know I've said all this already, and balance is right there as well. That gets 99 once it gets up to 97. I said all that already, but I'm just reiterating that, along with a couple other things like the offensive awareness, if you think that matters. Those things will not max out. If you're looking for a pure end game, pure 99 card, first off, this isn't it. This is not going to be a true pure 99 across the board. It'll be pretty close if all you really care about is skating and shot power, and you kind of toss in handles and offensive awareness to go with that. And the things that are lacking in some cases are still, mid 90s, maybe even high 90s, and can easily get boost from synergy to get up. In other cases, maybe lower 90s, and as I said already, on durability. Unfortunately, the very best that's ever going to get up to is 77, which is just absolutely piss poor for an end game 99 overall card. But the only point that I was trying to make there, reiterating on the shots and the handles and the offensive awareness and the balance, is yes, they will basically get to 99 again, because the wrist shot power will get 98. But it's for the most part not really happening until it's a max card. The first one is when it gets to 97, and balance will get 99, and then wrist shot accuracy, puck control will get 99 at 98. The rest, though, don't get 99 until the overall card is 99. So you need 27 goals out of this guy or more. But once you get that 27th goal, the card becomes 99, and those things all become 99 as well. And I get it if you want to say, hey, 95s are perfectly fine. Well, get his base card then, and you got 94 speed already, or 95 speed. I'm sorry, whatever. But you get the point. Like, his base card is already giving you that speed. You're going to get that after 12 goals on this card as well. I just think if you're looking for somebody who is purely, maxed all around, you got to look at it one of two ways. Either for you, it's basically pure all around when it gets up to 99. I'll get to that in a second, as I've already iterated like 3 times in the last few minutes. Or like me, you feel like it's not necessarily the 99 that you're looking for. You could maybe have them as a supplement on your team for others that are either 99 or close to it on those 3 key end game stats or attributes that I think of in terms of durability, poise, and particularly endurance. So if you don't think that, and you think that those things are basically fine, and they're also outside of durability, they're going to get, mostly fine as far as what they're going to end up as on 99. And the rest of them are going to be, either at 99 or close to it on the 99 overall card. Fine, but again, you're going to have to wait until you get 27 goals. Is that going to happen for you, before the new year, before February, before March? And there are people saying that if you get this up to 99 as early as sometime in February, that would be kind of early in the game to have a 99 overall card. Okay, I'm not going to go out and say that I disagree with that, because I don't know how everything is going to play out and what things are going to be released that aren't out there now. But that I'm not looking to drop 650K or anything close to that for this particular card right now. Just on the possibility of having a 99 as early as sometime in February, if that is potentially the case, and also feeling like there aren't going to be other 99s or other better options that might not even be 99s at that particular time, which you're talking about 5 almost 6 months from now. In a game that if it's able to have a life cycle that lasts the entire regular season or even into the Stanley Cup playoffs, you're talking about the majority of that time having already passed by the time that comes out. So it is what it is. I obviously belabored the point well above and beyond. It wasn't necessary to go to those lengths. Just kind of wanted to show that I've kind of got that information and it's available for me. It's technically a competitive advantage, but I don't play competitively. I didn't even bother with any of the competitive seasons events this past week. Didn't play a single game. So, and I didn't play any online seasons games at all either. I played 2 when the game first came out, 2 online season games. I haven't played any since then. So I'm not really doing this to try to play competitively with other players. I'm basically doing informational stuff and trying to have some fun little highlights and do some pack openings and cool stuff like that for this channel. That's mostly my focus. So me taking all of this time to explain, in excruciating detail my thoughts on this, and doing so in a way that hopefully for you, having the full set of facts that I've now provided to you, whether you had thought through this or not, you can that much, in my opinion, you can that much more easily look at this particular card for anything that you might not have realized on your own prior to listening to this extremely long explanation by me. And you might think, as I said, that you don't necessarily need durability, poise, and endurance to get up to 99. Some of the other ones that might be lacking as well in terms of getting on the body with checking and defense, you might not look for those things to get up to 99 for your forwards either. You might not necessarily be overly concerned with the fact that he's a left-handed shot and is very unlikely, except maybe once he's maxed out, to be taking any face-offs for you and playing center. But those are all things that I care about, and I pointed out that why they're concerns for me and why they become strong sells for me. Admittedly, if he was a no-name that almost no one had heard of, then and was selling for next to nothing, was I think one of the lowest ones I saw out there today was still 100,000 coins, and I think that's still kind of a lot for a potential kind of sleeper pick in this group. And I would expect that the price of that particular card that was selling for just under in some cases and just over in other cases, 6 figures at 100K, I'd expect that price to come down again, unless that particular player rips off a bunch of goals really early on. Yeah, I mean, if he wasn't who he was, if he wasn't Taylor Hall, if he wasn't such a prominently well-known player, probably one of the most of this set that's been released so far, and was more of an unknown, and particularly if he was one of the prospects, and there was a chance that he wasn't even going to make the NHL team, and has already been pointed out that if you play the entire year on an AHL squad, you could put up 1 billion goals. It's not going to impact your fantasy hockey player card at all. You got to put those out in NHL, SHL, or Liga. Those are the only options for you in the regular season. So once regular season is over, the whole event is over. So yeah, if he was a prospect, and not everyone was in agreement that he was going to make the starting team on day one for that NHL team, make the starting lineup, make the final squad, and not get kind of relegated down to the AHL squad. But wasn't one where I was the only one who thought that he'd have a shot at being able to put up either his full number or a very high number to get a very high rated card at the end of the year, and wouldn't necessarily like Kovalchuk look to put his last 2 out of 16 up in the final game of the year. Then sure, first off, it'd be going for a lot less coins, but also because of all those things that are making him different than he really is, then yeah, I might have looked for this as like a sleeper pick, and I might have been willing to put up an okay but not ton amount of coins for it, and taken a flyer and hoped to see a slightly good. Sort of unexpected by everybody, I guess, return in terms of what he'd actually be able to put out throughout the course of the year. But none of those things are the case for him. He's a prominent, well-known player, also known for having not finished last year, so that's a factor that's not working in his favor towards his value. And I really don't think that say at least the average player, even if they are a content creator, to be honest, is going through this level of detail, and in some cases that's actually totally fine. It's not meant as a complete knock on those individuals. For people that are highly analytical like myself that go through this stuff, sometimes if it causes you to into a form of inaction or not acting quickly enough, it's referred to as analysis paralysis. And you could definitely end up in that sort of situation here. Whereas if someone just said, "Hey, give me the highlights." Okay, well, gonna max on skate and shot and handles. Not great on checking or defense. He is left-handed, as you already know. But he's not going to come anywhere close to maxing on durability, not really so much on poise, and then even endurance is going to be 95 if he does get up to a 99. That person gets that information in under 30 seconds and immediately sort of processes it however they do, and might think, okay, I don't need to take more time to analyze this. We've got most of the information that we need. We don't know how many goals he's going to score and when those goals are going to be scored, sort of how early in the season, yada yada yada, and that might be enough information for them. And like I said, if they're not focusing as much on durability, poise, and endurance specifically, or any of the other ones that either don't get maxed out, or the ones that kind of only get maxed out once he finally does reach that 27th goal, then they would inherently value him higher than I would. We might have a different value on the value of, if you want to call it a coin, and I'm not talking about like Parker, but like the value of or Adrian for that matter, but the value of 1,000 coins, 10,000 coins, 100,000 coins, whatever it is, the value of X number of coins. We might have different perceptions or personal views on the value of whatever it is, X amount of coins. But even with that, it could be very easy for them to place a higher value on this particular card right now, and therefore also in the future, once he does or does not start to get those upgrades kind of early in the season particularly. So I don't think that it's possible to talk about this any more than I have. Hopefully I did at least make it extremely clear that yes, I pulled all that information off during the EA access, and so I had it even before we had full access with 3-day I guess you call it early access for the pre-order of either Deluxe or Ultimate, in my case Ultimate Edition. Or quite frankly, even 3 days later, when I believe you had to have pre-order of the standard edition. But I don't know what would have happened on that date if you ordered and then downloaded and played, if it was available to play. If you could have accessed the standard edition as not a pre-order, that you just bought the day of quote unquote release. I have no idea what would have happened in that case. I didn't do standard edition this year or last year. So I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm sorry, but Point is that I had all of this information while EA Access was still going on and was available for me when I finally got it to jump into the game and on the 3-day early access through the pre-order. And even though I didn't start off obviously with a ton of coins, I did rip a bunch of packs to start off the season, and so that certainly helped to be able to build up those coins pretty quickly. And I did make some choices kind of best I could based off of what I felt to be generally not ideal situations in the market for pricing, which makes a ton of sense, and I won't get into all that. But it was pointed out to be expected for anybody was that there is sort of no market for the cards until people have packed and pulled the cards, and so the first minute of the game when it started, the only cards that you could have up to sell in the auction market at that point, like literally the minute that you start the game, would be anything that had been acquired in a tradable format during the EA Access time, and so despite having a bunch of cards that I could have potentially looked to sell and get some coins for, and then turn around and go back and buy what was on the auction market. And I did a little bit of that. I don't know if it was the optimal choice. It's just what I chose to do this year. Was I ripped a bunch of those packs, and generally I almost exclusively quick sold them. I think I quick sold everything that wasn't 80 plus, hoping to get at least some value from the quote unquote gold premium cards. And then any of the 80 plus cards that I wanted, particularly those with X Factor synergy, up to and including like the 84 overall Headman. I did look to go and buy those, and I didn't really care if I felt like I was overpaying for the particular card, because again the market was new and fresh and didn't have a ton of didn't have a large quantity, and that's just standard supply and demand with less supply. No matter what that demand was, it meant you're going to see higher prices. So I definitely overpaid for some cards, not a ton, luckily, at the very beginning of the game. But it was armed with that information that I knew in terms of, which cards would be good to have at the beginning of the game when I thought that I might have a chance at playing sort of very low level basic competitively, and I found out in that first week that wasn't going to happen, so I've kind of forgotten about that part, and so now I'm just really focusing on building the best team that I can, and playing it mostly just in squad battles, and then any sort of hut challenges that I feel like messing around with, and that's it. So with that, as I said, I had all that information before the game started. I was happy to share it. I contacted either those that have done similar things, like providing that type of information in the past, as well as others. Again, I'm not trying to toss shade towards any of those folks. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know who I was? Yeah, they didn't know who I was. It's great English there. Great grammar. But, and I understand that part of it, but also, there's other reasons too that they could have played a factor. Essentially, there wasn't really any one individual or any sort of company or group that was looking to either have access to or to have their own copy or version of kind of what I had. And it's not as though I was trying to market it and sell it. I was just kind of willing to share with those people that I felt like would put up either a better website or a better app or even better content with videos on YouTube and the like. So it was a little bit, it wasn't is a little bit disappointing, honestly, that there wasn't anybody that wanted to take me up on that. And it seems as though some of the folks that are going to be putting in some of that information now, and we'll be looking to publish it relatively soon here. It seems like they more or less just kind of did it on their own, and that's fine, especially if they have been doing it on their own every year anyways. it's just kind of a continuation of that. But I don't know. I guess just the way that I look at it was, if I personally was willing to give you all that information for free in very user friendly, very usable format or formats, because I've got it in multiple formats. And I didn't break any TOS to create it and then to process it. I don't know. I kind of felt like, why would you just not take the sort of end game information, which I guess it's not like a double entendre, but it's got a double meaning there, I guess, in that term, because it's technically the end game cards and the end game optimal solution for how you'd want to build out your team, but also end game just in terms of kind of the information and what you would look to do with it. There wasn't really much of a need to process it any further. And as I said, I had it. I was willing to give it to those folks. And so now that that's not happening, if you did slog through this, let's get a timestamp for my own knowledge here. I'm really hoping this has not been 4 hours. Please be like 3 or less. Thank God. All right, so 2.5 hours. We'll keep it on this screen, I guess, as we exit out. As no one came in and joined, so it kind of suggests that. I mean, sure, it was late on a Friday night, and now it's relatively early into a Saturday morning. There's plenty of other stuff going on Fridays, including the Friday Night Shell and stuff like that, which you can watch over every Friday night on Nasher's Twitch channel. I would recommend doing that, even though I haven't seen this week or last week, but I'm sure it's fun. But yeah, the description that I had out here of explaining, my thoughts on the Taylor Hall, and I would have assumed that people could figure out that based off of how I worded that it was going to also be kind of a general view of the fantasy hockey cards in general, and how that could relate to the overall market as well. With the only things that would be sort of outliers to that would be any sort of one-offs. If they release icons that only have the one icon for that particular player that get released. If they finally bring us a Bobby Hull this year, for example, and he's I don't know, let's just make stuff up. He's a 98 overall. But he's not like a pure 98. He's got some stuff that's severely lacking, but I don't know. He's got some. What would be his best? Maybe shot or whatever. Maybe shot power, and that's like up there with 98 or maybe even maxed out at 99 or whatever. Essentially, a very very good card. Maybe even being considered kind of a master set player version of an icon card, but just a one-off. He's not going to have any other cards. It's not a master set icon. The way that the 85 to 90 cards are, which technically are also the 91 Gretzky and 91 Mario Lemieux also, but meaning like one of the higher end just standard icon cards that is effectively a master version of it because of how high rated it is, but it would have the traditional sort of icon card art to it, as opposed to the iced out no face stats listed master set icons. So that sort of thing, if stuff like that comes off, I have no way of predicting any of that, and it would potentially kind of throw a little bit of a wrench in any plans that I have or any plans that anybody else could have or whatever. But as I said, if you've slogged through 2.5 hours with me here on this, or I don't know if you're just hearing this now and you fast forwarded to the very end, hoping that there was going to be some sort of conclusion there. I think I tried to sum up a little bit. But what I would say is that there are going to be some other folks that have the same information that I have, which is the same information that anybody could have prior to processing it, and they're going to present certain things to you, and I think especially if you've used them in years past, go ahead and use them again, and have fun with that. But if you've got any like sort of specific questions, and especially if it's not being answered by those other folks, and they're not live with it yet, anyways, So at this moment, I don't know if they'd answer for you or if they would say, you know, you got to wait until the site or app is published. Um, you know, even after it is published, again, whether it's easy to find those kind of answers over there with them or anybody else that puts anything out. I'm more than happy. You know, there's my info down there on at least Twitter and here on YouTube. I think the PSN is slightly different, where the number 20 is spelled out and there's a space between each of those. So it's NHL space 20 spelled out space GTO. But you can hit me up on any of those. This was supposed to be a full team group effort, and we were supposed to get all of the setups for the channel all good and proper. You know, with everything, with the excellent crisp and bright front lighting, the kind of larger than life screen for me to be looking at things on. You know, and it sounds like I'm starting to talk about things in less importance for how to do a broadcast properly, but all of the streaming hardware and software and stuff like that all together with solid cameras, solid microphone, obviously the Elgato, solid streaming PC. You know, and then not just stuff that would make it at a minimum much better for any live streams that would be done, which is technically what this was here, but also you know, an ability to then you know, edit stuff out. Stuff like this on this one here is not really, and I know this without even having finished it yet. What I've put out here in the past 2.5 hours that I'm going to make a point of finishing in under 2 and 45, but what I've done here doesn't really lend itself well to a simplified and more succinct edited version. Although I think I said in the very beginning that I was going to try to do this as quickly and succinctly as I can, and I did neither. But having done this, whether I keep this on the channel live or not, I don't. First off, I don't think it really matters all that much. We have just a handful of subscribers, and we get basically about a handful of views on most anything that I put out. And some things lately have certainly been getting no views as far as what I'm seeing on my end. So. You know, it is what it is. If this is one of those, no one came in live, no one decided to chat live. If I don't know, if by the time the week 2 of the fantasy hockey stuff comes out in a week from now, if this particular video still has no views, I don't know. I might, if I still had it out at that point and it's still available publicly and has no views, certainly I might just decide to go ahead and kill it. But the other thing would be, and especially if I was actually working in a team environment and wasn't the only one that was putting out and creating the content, wasn't even the only one that was voicing the content, I think what I've done here could still be sort of painstakingly elaborated on to go over every excruciating detail, and yet could have been done in significantly less time. And maybe like a max of, I don't know, 20, I don't know, 17, 18, 20 minutes. And if it wasn't sort of as excruciating in terms of the amount of detail that went under, I mean, honestly, this could have been a 2.5 minute edited video. Unfortunately, like the content that I actually put out on the live stream wouldn't be one that I would expect that even a high-end editor would be able to just pull down that raw footage and create a solid 2.5 video out of it, 2.5 minute video out of it. That still at least gets the main point across and kind of why I feel like that main point is true for me and could be true for others as well. Instead, it would have to be a thing where I'd have to listen to the entire thing on my own and then kind of take down the highlights and create a script out of that, potentially come back in here to the card and just rip through in a scripted format, just reading off exactly what that information is. And my expectation is that kind of video would probably be about 5-7 minutes or so, if not maybe a little bit longer, and would be potentially that much more palatable, that much more easy to digest. But I did this here. I did it live. It was available for anybody to come in and talk. While I was doing it live, it didn't happen. Now it'll be left out there where people can leave comments on the YouTube channel if they want to. And again, if they want any other information, whether it's specifically what I talked about and here, if it's about the Taylor Hall card in specifically, or anything else that's related to it, you know what? I mean, I've already tried to not really looking to like publicize, not looking to try to I don't know how you call it, kind of promote it to people, but when I've seen people that seem like they have a little bit of an analytical bent to them, I've definitely reached out and said, hey, anything you want to know as far as how these cards are going to progress, just kind of hit me up. If you want to know, a list of either all the forwards or all the position players that have a certain synergy, or if you want to know anything, honestly, if you want to know at least as far as the base cards go, which players have a base, so like Taylor Hall here, for example. If you wanted to know which base cards have a base speed of 94, 95 or higher, and also either just that, or also are left-handed or right-handed, or big-bodied or small-bodied, or have a specific synergy that could get activated to aid that a little bit more. If he had X Factor or Workhorse on his base card, we just need that to get activated on along with the sustained pressure team-based synergy, and suddenly that 95 gets boosted to a 99. On my particular team, and the fact that base card in fact has Breakout Master, which can impact acceleration and some other things, but not speed. On my team, with the sustained pressure being activated, that 95 becomes a 98, and is second highest overall speed, and pretty good. But just by looking at this card, you should be able to very easily see, but I've already pointed it out. His shot stats on the base card are basically 84s, and wrist shot accuracy is 85, and wrist shot power is 83. So kind of mid-level 80s for me with a left-handed shot. My fourth line right winger left-handed is the 90 overall Rantanen. So that's my team. You know what I mean? So you want to argue with me that the base Taylor Hall is a better card than the Rantanen? Let's have that discussion. If you want to say that this fantasy hockey card is going to be able to be better than that Rantanen later on down the road, first off, I wouldn't completely disagree with you on that anyways, but it's going to take a little while for that to happen. Again, I'm not advocating people go out and get that Rantanen, especially because, as I said, it's fourth line for me right now, which means that it only needs to have one left-handed shot replace anyone, and it would replace him, and that card would be gone. And so, yeah, I wouldn't spend anywhere close to $650K for the Rantanen. You don't have to; it goes for less than that. Comparing the two, I wouldn't pay anywhere close to that for either one. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I could see how at some point between now and the end of the regular season, that this particular card, the Taylor Hall, could be more valuable to me than that Rantanen card would be. But you know what? I mean, honestly, if he becomes my fourth line right winger with his end game card, I don't know how stoked I am for that. I'd kind of shudder at the notion of having to pay 650,000 or more coins for my fourth line guys, or my third line on D, or even my backup goalie. But it is what it is. I said I wasn't going to go more than 2 hours and 40 minutes, so I'm going to cut this off now. That's going to be the broadcast. And if you made it all the way through to this, you know what, man? Like, honestly, send me a message somehow. Leave a comment on this video on YouTube if that's where you're at. If you can connect with me on Twitter, just go ahead and tag me if you're not able to send me a direct message. But I think I opened that up where anybody can just send direct messages for right now. And I'll have to change that once I start getting harassed. But for now, you can pretty much hit me up. I'm pretty available for not being a I'm not purely anonymous, but I'm not one of those that's using my name in terms of the name of the channel and stuff like that. But I would say I'm pretty available, and you don't have to simply just ask. As I said, what you can ask for, sort of a list, or just even asking simply if there are any players. Like, if you didn't know and you didn't listen to this broadcast and you said, hey, are there any base position player cards that even have a +1 to any team-based synergy? It's a very quick answer that I'd give you. No, there aren't any. Goalies, yes, and then position players can be 79 or lower, and they can have a team-based synergy. On the base cards, the special cards are different, and any special card, no matter what it is, no matter how overall rating is, how it compares to the rest of the market, any of the position players, as well as obviously all the goalies, can have team-based synergies for their synergies as well. So that would be a very, very quick and easy answer for me. But you want to ask me something that's a little bit more tricky, as far as, hey, are there any cards that, can you give me the list of cards that right now are available in the game that are either a base of 99 speed, or are able to be boosted to 99, again with likely with sustained pressure, team-based synergy activated, and potentially with additional boost from either X Factor or Workhorse as the player-based synergy activated on the team. And I'd be happy to share that. I pointed out most of those already anyways in previous videos, but I can do that if that's a concern for you. Or if you're more concerned with sort of shot power, if you want to know when to look for upgrades from base cards that will start getting into the 90s to high 90s, up to at least 95, let's say, like minimum, say 95 on shot power and 90 on shot accuracy. That seems like a pretty decent thing to have from a shot perspective. It'd be one of your better cards probably at the moment, and even in I don't know, in a month or so's time, it could still be a card that can make your team. So if you want to know, which cards, get to that point, when they're getting to that point, how many upgrades they would have to have, if they're only going to need 1+2 or 2+2s. To be able to get up to that point. Happy to point that out for you by pulling all the information down off the database. And again, it's based off of information that is readily available to every single person who has access to the game, as well as anybody that watches a video that points these things out. So it's not reinventing the wheel here. It's just that while you could look at, like, say the base Taylor Hall card and figure that out in terms of how many upgrades he's going to need past, like for this card, past the 12 goals, or any informs, like the first inform that could come out that could turn the 84 into an 86, you can see very easily what that would look like. You just got to add 2 to all his stats. So you're looking at shots at 86 across the board, generally speaking. That's pretty easy to see when looking at one card. But when you want to look at every card in aggregate and then do kind of a summation or summary of it, more than happy to do that for you. But I also said, if you slog through this whole thing and listen to everything and get to this end here, just hit me up and I'll try to hook you up with whatever it is that you want, whether it's an answer to a question, or if you're looking for some content that I can give to you without kind of breaking TOS by just giving stuff away or whatever else they might not want us to do. Happy to do it. But that's going to be it for me, and I'm going to probably try to need to get some sleep, missing out on squad battles here, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So, anyways, with that, peace out and have a good night.